Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. We are going to spend some time talking about Lambda School. There will be plenty of time for questions. If you have questions, specifically if you have admissions questions, if you want to apply to Lambda School, if you have applied to Lambda School and you're wondering about process or what you need to do, contact@lambdaschool.com is the place to go for that. As for questions that come up while you're watching and with us here today, use the Q&A feature of Zoom. So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window or screen, you should see a button that says Q&A. You can click on that and you'll see a window to ask questions. Those of us that are Lambda staff will be in there asking or answering those questions. I will also keep an eye on it as I go and try to answer questions live if that makes sense. What are we going to cover? We're going to talk about, actually, I have 2 copies of that slide. What are we going to talk about? We're going to kind of go through an overview of Lambda School. What is Lambda School? How does it work? Why is it great? And then we'll do an overview of each program that we currently offer. These will be done by a member of each team. So you can hear, what the program's about, and there will also be a chance for questions for each of those. And then we'll kind of wrap up and have a final Q&A. So I want to start and talk about who is Lambda School. This is a picture that we took at an in-person retreat in Florida a little over a month ago, and we kind of all got together in person. So the people you see here are our Lambda staff and actually a few students that were able to come meet with us. Lambda, though, is headquartered in Silicon Valley. We're a remote company, so we have employees and especially students all over the country, and we actually just expanded into Europe, into the UK. We do have local meetups and gatherings so we can get together in person, but students learn in their own homes. They don't work out of our office. They don't have to go any certain place to be at Lambda, which is pretty cool. The thing that makes Lambda really unique is that our incentives are aligned with yours. We say we're student obsessed. Really what that means in practice is if you don't succeed, then we don't succeed. If our students don't get good, well-paying jobs, we won't survive as a business. So we have to be sure that you succeed. We have to be absolutely invested in your success as a student and your ability to get a job. We want you to learn things that will impact your career now as you're starting out, but also for years to come. And there are kind of 3 ways that we demonstrate our commitment to student outcomes. Those are our tuition structure, which I'm going to talk about in a lot more depth, our curriculum and instruction model, and our efforts to help you actually get a job and launch your career. So let's talk about our tuition structure. This is something that's pretty unique about Lambda and pretty cool. Lambda students generally don't pay tuition up front. It's an option if you'd really rather do that, but most Lambda students don't pay any tuition to go to Lambda up front. They pay for Lambda School using an income share agreement, which we also call an ISA. And under an ISA, you agree to pay us 17% of your income after you graduate from Lambda School with 24 monthly payments, but only if you're making at least $50,000 a year, which is $4,166 per month. I meant to say if you pay up front, it's $20,000. If you pay through an income share agreement, it's 17% of your income monthly for 2 years, but only if you're making at least $50,000 a year in the industry that you entered through Lambda. So as a software developer or a UX designer or a data scientist. And that amount is capped at $30,000. So you will never pay more than $30,000 a year. So as an example, if you make $60,000 a year annually at your job, the job that you get after Lambda, that's $5,000 a month. You'd pay 17% of $5,000, which is $850 a month. If your income never reaches $4,166 a month, you will pay nothing. And our income share agreement has a term of 5 years. So if you don't get a job within 5 years, the income share agreement is canceled and you don't pay for it. If that happens, If you don't get a job making $4,166 a month, which is $50,000 a year, Lambda doesn't get anything from you, and that's no good for us. We can't, if that happens to all of our students, we'll go out of business. So our objective is to make sure that doesn't happen to you. We want to get you the skills you need so that you can succeed. Let's talk a little bit about our curriculum. Our curriculum at Lambda School is outcome focused. And what do I mean by outcome focused? We start by looking at figuring out what skills you need to actually go get a job in the field. So if you come to Lambda to study web development, the curriculum you're going to learn is based on us knowing what needs to be, what skills you need to actually get a job as a working web developer, and then we work backward from that. So we teach you the skills that employers actually want you to have to get a job. There's a term, if you work at Lambda, you'll hear this term IWY a lot. And this is actually a really important part of the way we teach. So what does IWY mean? IWY means I do, that's the I. We do, that's the W. And you do, that's the Y. This is how we teach everything. I do means, the I here is the instructor. I do means an instructor tells you about something, teaches you about something, shows you how to do it. Then they give you a chance to do it with them. They guide you through actually performing some task, applying some skill that you're learning. And then they give you a challenge. That's your chance to practice that skill on your own and really internalize it. You see this at every level of Lambda's curriculum. You do, I do, we do, you do, every day, every week, every month, and throughout your time at Lambda. There's one other unique feature of Lambda's curriculum and instruction model that I want to talk about. We call this async. We know that everybody learns at a different pace, is starting from a different point, has different natural inclinations and abilities, and therefore won't necessarily get everything they need to get to be a software developer or UX designer or a data scientist at the same pace. And we have built that notion into our curriculum. So we want to make sure you have the skills you need to get a job, and we don't want to artificially put a pace limit or a time limit on the time it takes you to do that. Async means that we can allow you to spend the time you need to spend to get each skill down and solid before you move on to the next one. With that, we're going to dive in and actually talk about the programs we offer. It just so happens that the first one is going to be the one that I run at Lambda, which is the iOS program. So I'll start by talking about that. The first question is, why iOS? Why would you want to learn iOS development? Well, I think probably basically everyone listening to me right now has an iPhone or an Android phone within arm's reach, if not in your pocket. You just heard mine start ringing. You might even be listening to me and watching this on your phone. And everybody having a computer in your pocket means that you can do all kinds of things that weren't possible before. You can access the world's information wherever you are, communicate with your family and friends, order a ride, order food, create art, listen to music, learn new things, track your health, and a whole lot more. And the modern smartphone really has changed the way we live and work in a lot of ways over the last 10 years or so. As the iPhone and the iPad become more powerful, people are using them for even more things. And for many people, their iOS device, their mobile device, is the single object that they spend the most time interacting with every day. It's apps that make your iPhone useful. And iOS developers inside and outside Apple built every app you use. So iOS developers are in demand. They command good salaries, and they're needed in all areas of the software industry. Now, why iOS specifically, as opposed to Android, which we're going to talk about a little later on? Apple has always placed a strong emphasis on visual and user experience design, and that emphasis really comes through to the wider iOS development industry. That's what attracted me personally to iOS development, is that I loved the kinds of apps that were being built for the platform and the excuse me, the thoughtfulness and attention to detail that went into them. And I think developers with an appreciation for great experiences tend to be attracted to iOS for this reason. If somebody comes to me and says, I want to do mobile development, that's really exciting to me, but should I do iOS or Android? My first question is really, well, which one do you use? If you're an iOS user, you probably should learn iOS development. If you're an Android user, you should probably learn Android development. They're both in-demand skills, but I'm an Apple guy, so that's why I do iOS. Let's talk a little bit about our course structure in the iOS program. And you'll actually see very similar structures for our other programs. They're broken up into 6 5-week-long units, so that's 30 weeks total. And the first 3 units are the iOS units. So you cover core iOS and architecture and design, and then Objective-C and beyond. And we're going to dig into these a little bit more in a second. And then you do what we call Lambda Labs. Lambda Labs is like our capstone project. You work on a real world project in a group with other students that you build and deploy. And for iOS, that means you actually put an app on the App Store that real people can download and use. And it's a really great way to take the things that you learned in the first 3 units and apply them and prove that you actually know them, and to have a piece for your portfolio when you're out applying for jobs. After you finish labs, you'll go through the 10 weeks of our computer science curriculum, which I wrote here as CS1 and CS2. But our computer science curriculum is one of the coolest things about Lambda. You will learn both C and Python. You will learn computer science fundamentals, including data structures and algorithms, computer architecture, operating systems, some things I'm forgetting. But these are the kinds of theoretical fundamentals that boot camps don't teach you, that are hard to learn on your own, and that tend to be the kinds of things that employers really want to know that you have some grounding in. So I think these last 10 weeks are super, super valuable. Let's dig in a little bit and talk about what we cover specifically in those first 3 units of the iOS course. So the first unit is called Core iOS. You learn the Swift language, which is Apple's modern programming language for doing iOS development. You'll learn how to use Xcode and Interface Builder, which are Apple's tools for doing iOS development. Xcode is a program that you download on the App Store, but it's the program you use to make iOS apps. You'll learn about UIKit, which is the primary way, the primary framework for doing iOS UI, and you just have to know it to build iOS apps. You'll learn about networking, so that's connecting your app to the internet, and you'll learn about how to create user interfaces. In the second unit, we kind of focus on architecture and design, some higher level topics, some of the things that sort of separate a beginner from somebody who's more intermediate. We'll talk about core data, which is a way of saving data on your local device, and we go pretty in depth there. Talk about intermediate Swift, so you'll keep learning the Swift programming language, learning more advanced features and ways of solving problems in Swift. You learn some design patterns, which are ways of thinking about problems, solving problems in a repeatable, well understood way. You'll learn about testing, which is something that's really important for modern developers on any platform, whether you're an iOS developer, a web developer, or doing any other kind of programming. Testing is the way you ensure that your code actually works before you ship it out to your users. And then we'll also talk about debugging, which is not just finding bugs in your app, but it's also the tools that you can use to understand your code as you're building your app. And then the last unit we call Objective-C and beyond. Objective-C is the language that was used for iOS development up until Swift was released a few years ago. It's still very important for iOS development, and so we cover it. We have some coverage of audio-visual programming, so audio, video, using the camera in an iOS device, doing image processing, that kind of thing. That's my favorite. That's my favorite week because that's the stuff I've done a lot in my career, and I think it's really fun. You learn how to use maps in your app, and then we give you a little taste of doing Mac development and watchOS development for the Apple Watch, because those are both also Apple platforms, and your skills as an iOS developer transfer over pretty well. So the last thing I want to talk about is projects. In Lambda's iOS course, you'll be writing actual iOS apps from day one. You can't learn to be a programmer without actually writing code, so you'll do a lot of that at Lambda. And you'll be building projects every single day, the whole time you're at Lambda. And when I say projects, I mean actual apps that run on your phone. You'll build a labs project, a capstone project that is a project on the App Store that goes in your portfolio. Throughout your time here, you will be writing code. Okay, that's all I have about prepared for you about the iOS course, but I have some time for questions. If you have a question specific to the iOS course, would you put it in the Q&A box and maybe prefix it with iOS so I can tell that that's what it's about? Yeah, so there was a question, iOS or web dev. That's a really hard one to answer because they're both fields with, a lot of demand and exciting jobs and good salaries. I think it really comes down to, what do you think you would enjoy doing most? Do you think working on apps that run on people's phones and provide the kinds of experiences that those apps do would be most interesting to you, or would you like to work on web apps? A lot of people approach this with this question with the attitude of, well, like, which one pays more, or which one has more jobs? And we can certainly talk about that. There are numbers there that may help inform your decision, but I actually don't think they're the most important inputs into that decision. The most important inputs into that decision are, which one will you enjoy more? All right. Are there project topics, or do we have to make our own, was another question. So most of the projects you'll build throughout the course are assigned projects, where we're giving you an assignment that you have to create. There is the opportunity to build your own project built into the iOS course, and students do that, and you're even encouraged to get it on the App Store if you can. Labs projects, again, are our ideas, and we spec them out. So I love students coming up with their own project ideas, because things that you are passionate about are going to be more fun for you to build. But we have a lot that we specifically want you to build to make sure that you get the skills that you need. Okay. Another question was, any plans to launch a part-time program? We don't have any concrete plans to announce right now, but it's certainly something we're looking at and are gauging demand for. There's a question about, do you have a way for students to cheaply buy Apple hardware, i.e. a laptop? We do not have anything like a discount program. We are, depending on the student and depending on their need, we are able to loan students Apple hardware if needed. That's not something we just give to everyone, but if you can show that you actually have a need and can't come up with one on your own, we can help you there. We don't want equipment to be an obstacle to you coming. What's the length of time to give and to complete the projects? That's a great question. Well, it depends on the project. There are projects that you build in the morning every day with your instructor. There are projects that you do in the afternoon. Not really homework, because you're at school and have help, but those are 3 or 4 hour projects. And then there are projects that you take a whole week to build, and labs, where you build your capstone project, is 5 weeks long. So it really very much depends. It goes all the way from very simple projects that take you a couple hours to build, all the way up to multi-week group projects. Somebody asked, where are most of the jobs located for iOS Lambda grads? There are iOS jobs spread around the country, and they're mostly going to match up where you find concentrations of tech jobs in general. Certainly the Bay Area is a big concentration. Cities like Seattle, Chicago, New York City, Dallas, and other big cities in Texas. Austin is another one that have big concentrations of the tech industry will be places, but there are iOS jobs, and I know people who are iOS developers throughout the country. Okay, so somebody asked, what if you're working on an app and want to learn more? Do you have any programs for founders? We don't have anything specific for startup founders, or people who want that are entrepreneurs but want to learn more about development. Certainly our course works for that kind of a person, except that the job situation is a little different. You're not necessarily looking for a traditional job. I would encourage you to email contact@lambdaschool.com to talk more about that. Um, Hamza asked about the difference in user experience between web and iOS, and that's a deep topic that I could talk a lot about. But one of the simplest answers to that question is that there's a lot of capabilities of an iOS device that can best be utilized by a native app, and those are things like the microphone and the camera and the motion sensor and the stuff for doing health tracking, and AR, augmented reality, is another thing that's big and up and coming right now, and machine learning, which is becoming a bigger and bigger part of a lot of mobile development. A lot of that, you can take much better advantage of those features if you're writing a native app. The user experience question in general gets a little more philosophical, and I would love to talk about that more, but I think we're out of time. So Stephen Brown asked, does the iOS course cover anything on databases? That question is a little hard to answer because I don't understand exactly where it's coming from, but the short answer is yes. We cover a system called Core Data, which is Apple's framework for doing data persistence. Essentially, it's Apple's version of a database for use in iOS apps, so we cover that. I'm looking to see if I think that's about it. There are some other questions, but they don't seem iOS specific, so I'm going to turn my mic over to Aaron, who's going to talk about our data science program.
Yes, thank you.
I want to make sure you could talk. There you are.
Great, thank you. So, data science, it is, if we go to the next slide. What is data science? And I'm a sucker for philosophizing myself, so I'll try not to do too much of that in the interest of time. But data science is, broadly put, looking at data and applying math and code to data to try to derive insight, to try to build something useful, perhaps. And so you can kind of separate what data science is into two categories. And these are not perfect separations. It's okay to like a little bit of one or a little bit of the other. But at the same time, it is useful to be able to make this distinction. Type A analysis data science, that's the sort of data scientist who maybe looks at some important business data, prepares a report or a presentation, Friday morning gives that presentation to the board of directors and some advice for what actions they should take based on this insight that they found in the data. The type B builder is somebody who similarly crunches data and finds insight, but then tries to build something with it. They work with software engineers, and for instance, if you think about Amazon's recommender system, you go on Amazon and they're constantly suggesting things you might like to buy. That's a very powerful and effective algorithm that is built on data science. Now, both of these are different emphases, but they both use the same tools, math and code. And in our program, we focus on that foundation, the math and the code, and we sort of try to help you find what sort of data scientist you're going to be, whether you're more A, more B, or a little bit of both. Next slide. So the course structure for data science is just a little bit different. And the other thing that's just a little bit different about data science is we are, in some ways, we are the only program that is not first and foremost about apps. Now, this isn't to say that there's no such thing as an app that needs data science. Of course there is. But data science can also involve just analyzing and preparing a report and tasks like that. So we have 4 core units of 5 weeks each: descriptive statistics, predictive statistics, data engineering, and machine learning. And the first 2 units give you the mathematical foundation you need, because really, yes, data science and machine learning and even AI are all hot buzzwords these days, but math is math, and a lot of it's actually been around for a long time. Even neural networks have been around for decades. That might surprise you to hear. You might think they're all hot and new. Well, what's hot and new is our ability to run them at scale. And that's where data science is special. And that's why we have Unit 3 data engineering, which is, okay, we understand some math, now let's run some systems. And then finally, machine learning, where we get to some more cutting edge things like those neural networks and so forth. As an aside, our philosophy, and a philosophy I would encourage, is start simple. We do teach neural networks, we do teach fancy things, but if a simpler approach solves your problem, it's probably a better approach for a lot of reasons. And then, of course, at the end of the program, we have labs, which are projects worked potentially across with students in other programs. So that means you could work on, say, an iOS application that has a machine learning component that is using the data collected by the device. And then we do also have CS material. For data science students, the CS material is focused on algorithms and data structures because that is foundational and matters for data scientists too, and does come up in interview questions. All right, next slide. All right, this is just sort of a laundry list. This is not even close to complete, but just a few words to throw out there. Tech skills and tech used and skills learned. What I want to emphasize is data science is big. I mean, all of these topics are big, but data science, because it has this mathematical component and this code component, there's a lot of ways to do it. We focus on Python, and specifically Python 3, modern Python ecosystem. Yes, R is a language in statistics, and there are others as well, and we might mention them, but our focus is on Python tools and some of the major libraries for it, like those listed there, pandas and scikit. And then with the statistics, we focus on sort of understanding the statistics and being able to communicate the results, being able to even explain them to a layperson, perhaps. That is important because that is the day job of a type A analyst. For software engineering, we use, we may be data scientists, but we also are engineers. My professional experience involves software engineering, and I very much believe in things like code quality and style, and in using proper tools like Git, and in structuring your code and all those things. So we have a whole unit on that as well. Next slide. Well, questions. And I will try to see if there are any in the Q&A. Please put data science. Let's see here. So DS3 was pushed back by 5 weeks. Yes, so we do see a 5-week cycle picking up after that. That was just because we keep a regular ratio of project managers, PMs, to students in order to ensure that every student every day can have good personal support and interaction. And we didn't have enough PMs for February, and so that's why that happened. But our PM pipeline should be opening up pretty fully in March, and we should be able to start cohorts every 5 weeks thereon. So data science in Europe soon. That's one that I don't actually specifically know about. If you mean actual data science program in Europe, not that I know of right now. If you mean being able to accept students from Europe, that depends on the financial aspect of it and your ability to work through time zones. We do have a data science student who is not in Europe, but in an Asian time zone, and he's able to work with our schedule. So if you're able to work with the finances and the schedule, we certainly don't mind wherever you are on the planet. Let's see here. Any other data science questions? So Abbas from India, yes, that it would also apply to you. You'd have to be able to make the time zone work, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, Pacific time, and the financial aspect, which is something that somebody other than me is more qualified to answer. We certainly want to expand, but right now we are full-time US only. Let's see here, data science, what is the suggested skill level of math in the beginning? That's a good question. So I want to talk about that some. You may have heard, oh, you need to master calculus to be able to do data science. Well, no. you need to master calculus if you wanted to actually implement the data science libraries from scratch. That is true. And that's a great skill to have. But the number of people, and there are only a few companies and universities that need to hire people like that. Most companies don't need to hire somebody to reinvent the wheel. They need to hire somebody who just knows how to use it correctly. And so you need enough math to be able to appreciate the intuition and properly interpret the models that you get. So the way I like to describe that with data science is you need a capacity for abstraction. If you remember your derivatives and integrals, that's great. That will serve you well. But as long as you can solve two equations, two unknowns, and you're willing to just sort of fight with the math a little bit, then you're in a good enough place. There is not a part-time data science course right now. We again, as with the international expansion, the answer is, well, we'd like that, and I hope to have happy news on that front, but not at this time. Let's see here. These questions are chaotic. No Java in the data science program. It is true you can do data things with Java, and we do touch on things in the Apache project, notably Apache Spark. So that means that we'll be depending on, it's actually primarily written in Scala, but we will be depending on some JVM things, but we won't really be teaching Java. What is the best way to prepare for the data science program? So I've got to say, anybody who I've heard ask that, anybody who really wants to prepare, usually I just want to say, well, you have the enthusiasm. That's what you need. Just do it. Just get it. There isn't one specific to-do list. If you are rusty with programming, look up Python tutorials, find one that clicks for you, and just do that. That is the single most important skill, and you will spend most of your time fighting with code and error messages and stack traces. That's probably true of pretty much all of our programs, but it's certainly true in data science. It'll be with Python. If you feel good about Python, then, well, it can't hurt to strengthen your math. But in that case, I'd say focus on linear algebra and statistics. Let's see here. Is the program industry focused? For example, healthcare, et cetera. That's a good question. We are not focused on any particular industry. I'm actually going to answer that question, though, because something I should have said earlier when I introduced the program, what is our focus? And that's another important philosophy. You know, you learn about statistics in a university, and it's going to be Greek letters on a whiteboard. You learn about data science from, say, a really short compressed boot camp, and it might be like no math at all, just a few magic lines of code, and then here's a number at the end. We try to have the best of both worlds. So we definitely make you write code, and you definitely want to get to numbers at the end. That matters. That's what you need in a job too. But we do also get into enough math and theory to be able to appreciate what you're fitting and to interpret it and not sort of not accidentally spread something that isn't true with data, right? You don't want to do that. So to the question of are we industry specific? No, but we try to draw industry relevant examples as much as we can. And so a lot of examples and data might be, there are a lot of health actual examples because biostatistics has been a field for a long time and a lot of statistics was developed in that context. But there are also examples from web, from analytics, from business, from insurance. Another one of our instructors, Ryan Herr, worked in the insurance industry. And so he's got lots of fun stories. And the insurance industry cares about data too, right? And about predicting things based on it. Does data science curriculum actively involve Kaggle competitions? So not formal public ones. We do have a project where you work on a Kaggle style competition, but it's more of like a friendly in-class competition. So it's still fun, and we definitely encourage you to enter real Kaggle competitions too. That can be a great thing to put in your portfolio. I would suggest for people interested in Kaggle, for people who don't know, Kaggle is a place where there's data, you try to fit the best model, and the best model wins money, hopefully. The ones with really big cash prizes have huge research teams devoted to them. So not saying don't try them, I'm just saying that you don't think that you can make it as a freelance caggler. It's not going to be a reliable flow of money, but it's a great site, and I'd encourage you to play with it. Is managerial and financial accounting analysis and data science. Not in our program, really. That would be a little bit beyond the scope. If you have that sort of interest or experience, then I think it could complement our program, but that would also specifically depend on your goals. Data science, how many projects can a data science student expect to have after the completion of the course? Every unit, at the end of every 5-week unit, there's a project week. And so there will be 4 project weeks in data science and the capstone project. So hopefully you can have at least 5 projects to point to. There are also hackathons and all sorts of student-led projects and people getting together and, again, working with students in web or other programs to do cool things. So if you have the initiative, you can have a ton of projects. And that is one of the main things we hear, by the way, is that is how you want to distinguish yourself, have a portfolio with polished projects. And that is what we want to help you do, because that helps you land the job. All right. Data science question. Oh, and I love this quote. I know this quote. A data scientist is someone who is better at statistics than any software engineer and better at software engineering than any statistician. Yes, that is a fun quote. And I've certainly worked with data scientists who were not that great at software engineering. And I've met software engineers who didn't know as much statistics as they thought. So it happens. But in terms of prior experience, if you have a good math background and no coding experience, we've had successful students like that. That is doable. You should expect, especially for the first few weeks, to maybe put in a little bit of extra effort wrestling with this programming language thing, because it really is a language. It really is something different, and it's a very picky language. But it is doable. I would suggest, again, looking up Python tutorials ahead of the start. And if you work through a few of those, you'll be in a great place. Carlos, I am really attracted to data science, but here web has higher flexibility as far as job app options. Can I come back to Lambda and study DS after getting a web dev job? So the one thing that I do know about this is you can't, if you have an ISA, you can't get another ISA until your first ISA is paid off. So there's that constraint. Now, modulo that constraint, sure, we'd love to have you come back and pick up more skills with us. Now, as far as the first part, web versus data science job options, I'd say it depends. Web is certainly a fantastic job market right now, but data science is the sort of thing that eventually all companies, even non-tech companies, are going to realize we need somebody who understands data. So it's a broad job market. It's a little bit more fragmented than web. And so, you have to be a little bit more creative in your job search, but it's a good market to be in. All right. How am I doing for time? And are there other questions?
I think your time is about up.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'll try to keep fielding questions in the Q&A. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, we're going to have Nick talk about the user experience program. Go ahead, Nick. Nick. Can you not unmute, Nick? Ah, there you go.
Can you hear me now? Alrighty.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself there for a second. So hello, everyone. Glad you all could make it tonight. I'm Nick Basile. I'm one of the UX instructors here at Lambda School. And tonight I'll be talking a little bit about the user experience course. So let's dive right into it. So we go to the next slide. So before I really get into the nitty-gritty of the details of the course at Lambda, I do want to take a minute to explain what user experience is for those of you who might be a little unfamiliar with it. So if you take a look around yourself right now, chances are you'll see a computer or a mobile device. Maybe there's a pencil and some paper nearby. You could be in a coffee shop or sitting at your desk at home. But regardless of where you are or what you're seeing, when you think about it, everything around you has been designed by someone at some point. And as user experience, or UX as we're commonly abbreviated, designers, we're in the business of designing everything. We try to understand why people behave the way they do, what motivates them, and how to change their behaviors and provide an experience that delights and engages them. And this pursuit is what user experience is all about. Now, we can apply UX to any field, any discipline, or really any human endeavor to design a better experience and outcomes. And while we can apply UX design processes to anything, since we're pursuing careers as UX designers, we're going to be focusing our efforts on creating products or services for businesses, nonprofits, governments, or really any other economic entity out there. So within this context, the Nielsen Norman Group, and they're one of the big sort of thought leaders in our space, explains that user experience encompasses all aspects of an end user's interaction with a company, its services, and its products. And frequently, we'll see UX used interchangeably with terms like user interface or usability, and there's a lot of confusion around there. And while these are important aspects of user experience design, they are subsets of it. Instead, UX is about the entire experience of a product. So by focusing on the entire product experience, UX designers deliver value to an organization by identifying areas where the experience is below their users' expectations. And then we seek to remedy that situation by designing a better experience through research, ideation, prototyping, and other techniques. So in other words, we're essentially detectives trying to uncover our products' who, why, and what. Who are our users? What should we build for them? And why would they want it in the first place? So answering these questions and then translating those answers into actionable designs that our teams can build is at the core of what we do. So I hope that kind of clarifies what user experience is all about. So let's take a look at the UX course at Lambda. So we can go into the next slide, please. Alrighty. So when we started building the course, we wanted to make sure that we were teaching our students practical skills that would help them land a job in the field. That's kind of what the whole point of Lambda is, right? So we talked with hiring managers and continue to connect with them to figure out what skills they're looking for in new UX designers. So we kind of did a little user research ourselves. And one thing that was continually brought up in these interviews was that a lot of new designers lack the real world practice and experience that hiring managers were expecting from them. So with our curriculum, we've worked to incorporate lots of projects and real-world practice in addition to the fundamental UX skills that are critical to success in the field. So throughout the curriculum, you'll be doing lots of projects, working with students in the web and the data science and the iOS programs as well once you get into labs, and sort of cross-collaborating and trying to gain all of that real-world experience as quickly as we can here at Lambda. So that's a big picture approach to our curriculum. So let's take a look at what the course structure looks like. So we head over to the next slide. Thank you. So as you can see in the graphic here, our course is broken into 3 major sections. We have the UX core in red, intro to web development in blue, and then labs in black. So the UX course section is a multidisciplinary course that teaches you the core skills of a UX designer. So you'll learn cutting-edge UX techniques for validating, testing, and designing digital products, how to design interfaces with the latest graphic design software, and how to leverage psychology and design theory to create usable products. So while you learn these UX fundamentals, you will also be preparing yourself for a career in UX and gaining real-world practical experience as a UX designer, doing those projects and cross-collaborating like I mentioned earlier. So after the first little bit of the UX core, you will progress to intro to web development to learn the basics of HTML, CSS, and I think a little bit of JavaScript as well. Now, this isn't going to turn you into a developer per se, but it will help you become more useful in the real world because you'll be able to more effectively collaborate with developers. You'll know enough code to have an intelligent conversation with them and really describe what you want your products and interfaces to be doing in code terms so you can have that conversation. Next, you'll move into labs. And as you can see here, I think we're the only course that does labs twice now. So maybe that'll change in the future, but right now we're doing it twice, really emphasizing that real world practicum. So when you move into labs the first time, you'll work with other Lambda students to produce a real product from scratch. And after labs, you'll move back into the UX core curriculum to reflect on everything you learned there. So you have a moment to take a breather, pause after sort of the frenetic pace sometimes of labs, and reflect and learn from that experience with the UX instructors. And once you've done that, you move back into labs to further immerse yourself in user research, testing, and design, while also mentoring the incoming labs UX students in Labs 1. So doing so, you're refining your practical skills and developing your mentorship abilities that will help you stand out in today's job market. So that's more or less how the UX course is structured. Some of the, I didn't really touch on this, but some of the techniques we'll be learning, personas, user flows, customer journey mapping, those are some big ones. We'll do a lot with information architecture. These are all kind of buzzwords you may or may not have heard. We touch a little bit on content strategy, but not tons of that. And of course, we'll be doing a lot of user interface design. So instructors, we primarily use Sketch, which is sort of the de facto standard in the space. But there is, you're free to use whichever graphic design software you want. So if you're familiar with Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, go ahead, and you have a license, go ahead and use that. If you want to use a free tool like Figma, that's certainly welcome, or InVision Studio, something like that. So there's no tool requirement, although we will be teaching in Sketch. So that might help if you can pick up a Sketch license as well. So we will certainly be doing a lot of UI and design questions as well. Design skills as well. So I guess if we move on to the last slide here, we will just have some questions. Alrighty. Let's see, I've got a question here. Does the program touch on UI? Yes, it does. It certainly does. We do a lot of UI design in combination with our UX skills. So if you think of like the product design cycle, which is something we teach here at Lambda, at the beginning, we do a lot of research, trying to understand who our users are, what problems they're having, and then we do a lot of ideation and sort of rapid sketching and iteration to figure out what solutions we could bring to them, and do a lot of rapid testing, a lot of user testing. And then we start moving into our design tools. And so at that point, we will use Sketch, and we'll start increasing the fidelity from wireframes to mockups to prototypes of our designs. And all of that is using graphical design tools. So let's see here. UX, will a part-time course be offered sooner in the future? That's not on the horizon just yet. We're a pretty new course at Lambda, so we're still trying to make sure that the full-time course is up to par, which it is, but we're working on improving it and iterating on it. So one day we would love to have a part-time course, but that's not quite there yet. The question, is there a lot of focus on psychology or more on design? Really good question. We definitely touch on psychology, more in the sense of probably color theory and maybe a little bit of UX sort of patterns, but we don't really dive too deeply into it. It's more of a focus on design. But certainly if you're interested or have a psychology background, we can certainly dive into that a little bit more as well. So let's see. Seeing a lot of questions jumping around here. Is UX more of a career for creative types, or is more technical and analytical? It can be both. Certainly there is room for creativity, coming up with solutions to problems. But if you're really into data analysis and looking at how changes to your design impact your user flows, looking at tools like Google Analytics, and really getting a feel for like A/B testing, you can get very analytical very quickly in the world of user experience. So it's such a broad field, and we kind of take a general approach through it. You can really find your niche within the UX world and explore it fully in your own terms, on your own time a little bit as well. But we try and cover a broad breadth of everything as well. UX in terms of pay, do you make more as a UX designer or web developer? I think that is highly contingent on where you are working and what company you end up at. So I don't think I have hard numbers on that. I would say generally you might make more as a engineer, but I would have to fact check that. Let's see. What are particular hardware requirements for the UX program? I don't think we have a set hardware requirement. We used to have a requirement that everyone was on Mac, but I think we got rid of that requirement. So as long as you can use a tool like Figma, or Sketch or something like that, and you have access to Google Docs, you're in good shape. Let's see. Someone asked, we have to pay for the tools separately. At the moment, yes, if you want to use a paid tool, you would have to buy that on your own. So something like Sketch or Photoshop. But there are free tools out there. I mentioned InVision Studio and Figma. So those are free tools, and they're pretty good as well. So you can certainly do the course without paying for a bunch of software. What kind of success have people had with your UX program? We're still in the first cohort right now, so we haven't quite gotten to the point where we're seeing success. I will say, watching the students walk in on day one with very little background in design and user experience, and seeing where they are now, they're just about done with their UX core curriculum. The difference is so exciting to me. And the skills they've learned and mastered, I'm very excited for them as they start hitting the job market. So we've seen some tremendous growth in our students and what they've learned. Let's see. UX is the primary focus on software web. We do a blend. We focus on the web and software design, but we also focus on mobile design. And we do have dedicated modules focusing on Android and iOS. So we try and cover as much of that as possible. In today's world, everything is pretty mobile first to begin with, or websites need to work on both the mobile devices and larger laptops and desktops. And so as a UX designer, we need to consider all the possible devices our users could be using. So we need to be able to design for those different situations. So we definitely cover all of that in the course. Let's see. Trying to see if there are any more. How much is UX part of VR and AR? Really good question. It's very much a part of that. You're designing not only like a experience, you're designing like a whole 3D environment for somebody to interact and operate within. So I would say UX is certainly part of that. We don't necessarily cover that just yet in the course. We're not quite there. Probably in the medium term future, we're going to have to start incorporating some of that material into it. So UX is definitely a part of that. Question, is there a preference for which tool is best to use? So as instructors, like I've mentioned, we'll be using Sketch during class. So if you're using Sketch, it will be a little easier for you to follow along. But that being said, you can use the other tools. They're all pretty similar these days. There's one or two slight variations. But for the most part, they're all pretty similar. And the instructors do have a breadth of knowledge. We all like looking at new tools and experimenting and figuring out which one works best for us. So we definitely go and explore them and try and figure them all out. So we have a pretty good breadth of knowledge when it comes to tools. Let's see here. Couple more questions. What kind of projects do we work on? We're still figuring that out for the next group of students. We try and mix it up so that there's some variety and everyone's not coming out of the program with the same batch of projects. In the last one, we built an e-commerce site. Students right now are working on a brewery, essentially content management and e-commerce site with a membership portal. So that's pretty interesting. Next week, they're going to be working on an app, a social game, essentially. So they're working on the experience for that. What else have they worked on? They've worked on to-do apps as well. What else? They've worked on a variety of projects. And the really cool thing is being in Lambda, being part of the Lambda community, our developer friends need some UX help from time to time and some UI help. And a lot of our students have gone over and helped them out with their projects. And so it's really a collaborative, friendly environment here at Lambda, where people are always looking to help each other out. So a lot of our students have gone out on their own, either in the hackathon or even in their free time, and have worked on a lot of projects for their portfolio that way. So all sorts of variety in terms of what we're providing, but also what you can do here with everybody else. Let's see, if you plan to get into the program when you finish, are you able to come back and learn the newer approaches to the field at no cost, or do you have to pay again? That's a really good question. If you get in and go through it, definitely encourage and try to promote the ethos of continual learning and being a lifelong learner. That's something we emphasize a lot in the course itself. So we hope you would be actively learning on your own. I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, you get access to our written curriculum even as an alumni. So you can always come back and refer, and we update that and keep that current. So you can always come back and refer to that if you want to review a concept, or if there's something new that we cover and you haven't gotten the chance to learn it yet, you could probably start with us and then go jump off to it. And I think that might be the end of my time. How's that looking?
Yeah, let's wrap up and move on to the next program, which is Android with Chance.
Okay, can I go ahead and steal? There we go. All right, if I steal the screen. There we go. I have a few things I want to share with this as well. So, hey, it's going to be hard to follow up. Everyone's been really good at doing a lot of really awesome presentations. I feel like I drew this short straw presenting after Nick, the user experience designer. I feel like presenting is a big part of that. So Android. Android did a really good job talking about mobile in general, the advantages or who uses mobile, why you would want to develop for mobile, and all of that applies to Android as well. He talked about iOS being the reason he went into iOS was for the user interface design. It's actually very similar to the reason why I first got excited about Android. Was that the difference is he is an Apple guy and I'm a Google guy, Windows and Android and all that stuff. But yeah, I came from a graphic design, user interface design background. So going to Android, being able to quickly build up apps that have a user interface that look great was really exciting to me. I came from a traditional university background. I had 3 years of university before we even started doing user interfaces. It was all command line. The closest thing we got was to build an HTML web page, but we weren't able to bolt that into any of the other things that we're doing. So Android, being able to jump in and build something that looks great and is super functional is really exciting. I took the screen over and forgot to switch over. Another thing is Android is the most popular mobile operating system in the world. It's very competitive on in the United States, with iOS having a slight edge, but throughout the rest of the world, Android's kind of taken over. It also runs on Java, which is the most popular programming language, depending on which numbers you look at, but either way, it's all the way up there. So being able to use something that has a lot of eyes on it and has a very popular programming language gives you a lot of skills to look at. More eyes means more revenue, and more revenue means more jobs. And again, Java is not just Android. It is very, very popular for web servers, web apps, and other applications. So learning Android is very helpful, and it's going to help you as you're learning Java and doing these other things, so you can transition those skills over. There are billions and billions of devices that run on Java, Android being nearly half of those. So talking about what we cover. So we start from square one. Our curriculum is designed to start with adults that have little to no programming experience. The first few days, we talk about what is a development environment, what is a variable, what is a method, and we quickly ramp up to more complicated things like what are relational databases and how you would build a custom user interface and all those things. So if you already have programming experience, you'll quickly be introduced to new and exciting topics. So here's the course structure, very similar to all these other ones. As you've seen, we work hard to have a parity with iOS course. So students coming out of both courses will have a very similar skill set in their respected fields, because anything that's built on one platform will likely need to be built on the other one as well. So we start off with core Android, talking about beginner level Android things, which is actually very important. And there's a lot of, surprisingly, by the end of this, you'll have a lot of skills that, most of the skills, in fact, that interviewers ask for. We cover a lot of those here. So that's, we'll get into detail in the next part. Then we go into Android architecture and design. So how to design an app so architecturally, so it's structured in a way that's modular and allows you to expand upon it. Talk about debugging and testing and that stuff. And then finally, we go into Kotlin and beyond. So just like iOS has Objective-C, Android has Kotlin, except for Kotlin is a new language that Google's really starting to push, and people love it. It's really great to work with. It's just not quite as popular as Java at this point, which is why we're focusing on Java to give you those Java skills, and then we give you Kotlin to give you more of that. Then you go into labs where you do a 5-week project. You work with the web students and iOS students so you can, as a team, build a fully fledged application across the platforms. And then you join the CS group and talk about Python and C in the CS1 and CS2 sections. I see there's questions coming through. I'll grab those in a second as long as they'll stay up. So what do we cover? So this is kind of filtering down each of those sections. So core Android, we talk about the basics of the Java language. And Java is what's known as an object-oriented programming language. And that's part of a family of programming languages. So learning those principles will be able to apply to a lot of other languages, languages like Python or C++ or C# or some of these other words that you might have heard. They have very similar structures and tenets. So learning those basic tools is going to be really helpful with that. We talk about Android Studio, and we work in that every day, which is the development environment specifically for Android that's free and available through Google. And they support that. They develop that and iterate on that quite frequently. So we talk about networking. So many apps, if not all apps, work with a web backend, meaning that they interact with a web server to get data and share data across things. And that's going to be very, very big. And in most job interviews, they will ask you about that. Then we spend some time developing more advanced user interfaces. This is like how to create great custom app icons, how to create custom view objects, and animations. And we'll show you a couple examples of that in a minute. So next we go into architecture and design. One of the biggest tenets of this course is trying to make you give you a broad skill set, some good resume keywords. And one of those is SQL. SQL is a very powerful and very common language used to create and store complex data. So it's not Android specific. We give students a working knowledge of the language in general, and then specifically how to use it in Android. Then we talk more about more intermediate, higher level Java topics, and then we go deep into advanced object-oriented programming with things like inheritance and polymorphism, interfaces and abstract classes, and some of those other design patterns. Then it's very important to build robust and efficient apps. So we spend time teaching students the tools that they need to test, debug, and improve the performance of their apps. The last unit is Kotlin and beyond. So we do spend some time with audiovisual programming. We talk about how to play audio and do video in your apps. And then we go into Kotlin. We'll spend a week or two on Kotlin to allow you to give you foundational knowledge in that language and the tools you need to become experts. And then we spend a couple weeks on Java and other platforms, because we don't want you to be shoehorned into Android only. We want you to be able to have that skill set to understand what's going on in these other aspects. So that's where we can use Java on desktops or on backend or things like that. Let's see. This course is designed to give you a knowledge that you need to build great Android apps. But beyond that, it's, as Nick said, designed to give you the skills you need to support continued learning and growth in the field of software engineering in general. So in each of the lessons, we dive in, we'll teach a topic, then we'll look at the online documentation of that topic and say, okay, here are the specific things we've covered. Here are some other things that you can learn, and here are additional resources for you. And the end goal of that is so that when something new comes out, you can pick that up quickly and start using it. Software engineering is so vast. Every platform there's so much stuff, there's no way you can remember it all. So having those skills to know where to reference and how to learn those things that you can't remember or you never worked with is huge in any aspect. So before we get to questions, I wanted to touch on, show a few of the projects that some of the students have worked on. So all of these projects, with the exception of the last one, have been, were written by students in a day. So each day you'll have an afternoon assignment, and these are some of the things that you do. So this first one is, so this is a day one project. So day one, you get in and you can build an app. So by the end of the first intro course lesson, you'll have built this app, which allows you can see there's multiple buttons, allows you to respond to a user interaction and then change the user interface accordingly, depending on what they select. So this teaches you how to create a listener, which will listen to specific events, and then how to create views that allow you to change what the user interface looks like. The next one is a little bit later on, where we talk about, this is a comic reader app. So this is where you work with a online API. In this case, it's the XKCD Comics. He has a great, very simple API to work with. And this is your starter project in that field, where you can download an image and additional data and then view it, display it in a way that's easy for the user to see. And then you can interact with it. In this example, you can go to previous comic, next comic, or get a random one, as well as a few other features. This shows you, demonstrates the ability to be able to work with things on the internet with a separate network. The next one I wanted to show you is where the students will create a custom view object. So a view object is an object that's on the user interface that you can position and scale and change how you want. Where it gets a custom one is now you can interact with it at a more granular level. So this is a very simple looking object, but now when you click and drag it, you can adjust it accordingly. So this is by sliding back and forth, I'm rotating this volume control knob, and then you can programmatically access the attributes here to be able to get settings back. So if I wanted to set volume, if I wanted to set transparency, or whatever it is that you want, this is a view that you can do that. This is a tool that's really used a lot in game design and in more dynamic user interfaces. People will create these views and then you can animate them specific ways. So you can have it, let's say you have a character on the screen, and if you tap him, it'll do a specific thing according to how you program it. The last one I wanted to show you is one each day when we're teaching a topic, and this is true with all the courses. When we teach a topic, we go through a guided project where we work together to build a project. So this note taker app was an app that we worked with the students through the first unit, allowing them to create custom notes. So you just give it a title. And I can't even spell, but that's good enough for that. Thank goodness for those developers. So you can create custom notes that it will store locally in an SQL database, but it will also store that in an online server. And you can see how we all have them all listed out. It looks really nice. And you can edit them. You can also see that we've added this note at the bottom. So these are just a few demonstrations of some of the projects that you would be doing on a daily basis. In addition to those, we have project weeks. So at the end of each unit, you have a week to complete a bigger project. And then finally, you have a lab, the labs week, where you get to do a 5-week project with a team. So I saw that there was a few other questions that got missed, so I'll see if I can grab those. So Android version or Java version, Java does change a little bit. We're focusing mostly on Java 7. It hasn't changed a lot. It's not like Python where code written in Python 2 is no longer applicable in Python 3. The later versions of Java will give you a few more things. So we touch on a few things that are Java 8 specific, but you don't need to use that it doesn't limit what you can do. Thomas was asking about Flutter. Flutter is its own thing. I had hopes to kind of include that with Android stuff, but it's a whole other language. There's a lot of really cool stuff that Google's pushing there, but Flutter is a programming language and design tool to design user interfaces that look good on Android and on iOS. And that's something that's Google's pushing. They really like it, but it's not really hit the mainstream. It's not a big thing, and it doesn't seem like it will anytime soon. Hopefully that answered your question. So any app, so is it easy to learn? Oh, dang it, they keep disappearing. All the questions keep disappearing. So there's a question on JSON. JSON is a way to store data and transmit it over the internet and over networks. So it takes a bunch of data and stores it as just text that's easily translatable. We do that. We handle that in the Android course. We talk about JSON, and that's generally how these web interfaces will have you download stuff. So we'll download that and translate that. So I'm jumping back into the dismissed questions. We talked about Java version. Hopefully it's in order so I can potentially see. I saw a couple of good ones. And if you have more questions, if your question didn't answer, please post it again. And I'm keeping an eye on the numbers in the open. So I'll try and get to that. I saw some good ones that I didn't want to miss.
For what it's worth, Chance, those are disappearing because other staff members are answering them.
Okay, cool. And that makes me feel better that that it's not leaving it. Do you put any projects on Play Store? So the last day of Unit 2, we teach how to publish projects. And we encourage you to take your Unit 2 project after you've completed it to publish that on the Play Store, as well as the 5-week project that you will complete in labs. The design for those projects and the end goal for all the students is that they're projects that paying customers would be able to use. So in order to do that, you'd put it on the Play Store. So yes, that's the end goal in all the projects. And then any of these projects as well, you're welcome to spend more time on them to make them Play Store worthy in order to do that. So Android companies who handles the images and animations on Android apps, is that a separate job in app companies? The way apps are separated, it really depends on the size of the company. If it's bigger, you look at apps like the Facebook app or many of the Google apps that have large teams working on them. That would be separated out. You'll most likely have larger teams to have user interface designers like Nick and his students designing those objects for you and then giving you the structures to put those images into them. We do touch on basic design principles because a lot of times you'll be the only person working on an app and that'll be there. Okay, looks like that. So what we found is that, in practice, any Android app or the vast majority of Android and iOS apps would best be cross-platform. So a lot of times you'll have people that either know Android and iOS, or you'll have teams of people that have iOS developers and Android developers. A lot of my experience as well, this is just a truth of our industry. Customers are really, really cheap. So a lot of times that they'll hire out software developers in China or India or these other companies, other places where labor isn't as expensive. And then not to say that all of those people can't be great developers. Generally, those good developers would get stateside jobs. But anyway, a lot of my work personally was taking those apps that were hired outside the country and then bringing them back in and fixing them and improving them, making them actually work. I like this other one. Android looks super fun. It is. I love Android. It's huge. There's tons to learn, and there's no way you could ever know everything. But it's really cool, the things that you can do with not a lot of code. You can make some really, really slick-looking apps very easily, as we see in the first app that you build. Very first day, no coding experience whatsoever, and you already have an app that has 6 buttons that'll change the screen. So it seems like all those other questions have been addressed. Do we have any other questions? How am I doing on time? I think I'm getting to the end of my time as well. So we'll give a few more seconds.
I think that's time. There's one last question from Jeffrey, who has hired so far. We're in the middle of our first Android cohort,
Yep.
so we don't have any data for that yet.
Yep. Okay, I will give the screen back over to Andrew. Thank you, guys.
All right. I got to go through that quickly. Okay, next is Dan Frainer with information about our web program.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dan Frainer. I'm here to talk about our web program. So what we offer is a full stack web program. Those that don't know what full stack means yet, it essentially means that we are going to build software that users will see. If you are not familiar with software at all, essentially the full stack is, or the front end is what you have seen of software. We also go into back end. So the back end are going to be the servers and the databases and the stuff that we don't see as consumers. Can we change slides? So first question is, what is web development? All right, and the most simple way to answer this question is to say that it is simply writing software to be consumed in a web browser. You all have downloaded apps. You may have installed applications on your computer, and those are considered apps, right? Web development is the kind of industry of building web applications. And web applications are applications just like a native app on your phone or a native app on your computer, but they run in your browser. So Chrome or Edge or Safari or Internet Explorer, whatever browser you have installed on your computer, when you go to a website or web application, you actually are downloading the source code for that application, running that app in your browser. Let me switch now. So why web? Why would you want to get into web development? Web is one of the fastest growing sectors of software. We are seeing this explosion of users using all types of different devices. So phones and iPads, tablets, computers, watches, etc. And a vast majority of those users are accessing things on the fly. We don't have, storage space is getting a little bit better on mobile devices now. But for a lot of people, there's not a ton of storage space to download a ton of apps, and especially with something that we can grab in our browser. So web is exploding as a sector of software development. Another reason is that we use JavaScript in our full stack web program. We use JavaScript front end, back end, but JavaScript is growing as one of the fastest languages in the world right now as well. And really, with the advent of Node and newer JavaScript runtimes, we are able to use JavaScript in virtually every single aspect of software development. So it's a really great, awesome language to learn right now. Slide. So let's go through our web course structure. We essentially have broken down our web course into 6 units. First of all, we start with web fundamentals, and we'll go deeper into these units in the next slide. But web fundamentals is our first 5-week block. So we'll have 4 weeks of content and of instruction and of mini projects, and then we have 1 project week to cap off each of these units. So these project weeks in the future are going to be these cross-cohort collaboration projects where you're going to be working on a real team, building real software, and you're going to be collaborating with students that have been in the course for 15 weeks. You're going to be collaborating with students that are, been in the course for, on the second unit course, that have been in the course a shorter amount of time than you, but it's really cool to get a real team collaboration effort. So the first unit is web fundamentals. And like I said, we'll go into details of that in the next slide. Our second unit is going to be front-end web development. So I had told you what the front end actually is, right? It is what we see of the software. Unit 3 is going to be our back-end development. And so this really rounds off the whole full stack developer kind of moniker there, having front-end and back-end experience. We then move into our labs portion, where you are going to join a team and work on this major project for weeks. And by the end of it, you're going to have a fully deployed, workable project that you'll be able to show off to anyone, and quite possibly be able to start getting users, paying subscribers to it. At that point, you're going to move into the computer science portion of the school. And as Andrew told us at the very beginning of this webinar, this Q&A, that is really what differentiates Lambda School grads from a lot of other kind of coding boot camp grads, is that we offer this real cohesive computer science level course. And so you'll go through 2 units of computer science, data structures and algorithms. You'll learn some super low level language C, some Python, and kind of round off your full education there. So you're a much more rounded student rather than just taking 12 weeks of some, hip technologies and getting pushed out into the world. You're going to really come out fully rounded as a student. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, next one. Okay, great. There we go. I have mislabeled this UI, but this is our web fundamentals unit. So in this unit, we cover semantic HTML. So really how to write HTML that has meaning to it. We learn about CSS and preprocessors. We go through quite a bit of CSS. It seems to be that a lot of developers and a lot of what we call full stack web developers in the world don't have a really super great grasp of CSS, and we go pretty in depth into it, and preprocessors as well. Then we learn about responsive design. Responsive design is the art of being able to build one piece of software to be used on many different devices. So you can use it on your phone, on your computer, etc. We then go into the kind of the basics of JavaScript and really get a good feel for the language and why we use it. And why we use it is DOM and DOM manipulation. So that's essentially JavaScript for our browser, and how to do things like clicking a button or having animations triggered, things like that. Any kind of whenever you click on something or any kind of action you take is JavaScript, and it's DOM and DOM manipulation. Next one. The next one we have is our front end. So our front end development, we focus on React here. We do that for a number of reasons, but it's the front end framework that we've chosen to use. By no means does this mean you're going to be pigeonholed into being a React developer solely. We learn the concepts of frameworks, why we use them, the pros and cons, and it really opens the door for using other frameworks on the front end. We go into intermediate React, so we use React Router, we use higher order components, talk about CSS and JavaScript, things like that. Routing, like I said, HTTP actions. We then go into Redux. And so Redux is a state management tool that really helps round out our React applications. And then we also go into some more advanced Redux stuff as well. Next. And then we finally, our third unit is we move into the back end. And like I said, we use JavaScript, isomorphic JavaScript, so across the entire stack. And we use that with Node.js. So Node.js is a runtime that allows us to write JavaScript to be used on servers. So we write our own server with Node and Express. We then get into databases, relational database management systems, and really understand how to connect all the pieces together to build your front end, to communicate with your server, to communicate with the database, to really build this full stack application. We go into a primer on authentication as well. So we talk a little bit about authentication. It's a huge subject, but we get into it a little bit. And then also rounding out the program with testing, learn how to properly test all of our applications that we build. Next. So for web, we actually have two different options for our schedule. We have a full-time option. So this cohort, that starts every 5 weeks. It is a 30-week course, just like all of our other programs. And it is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific. Pacific time is Lambda Standard Time. And so that's our full-time option. You're in class every day. You have a lecture. You work on projects. You work with your cohort mates. You meet with your project managers. It is a full day immersive experience. So for those, our next start date on that is February 11th. Then we also have a March 18th, April 22nd, and then every 5 weeks after that. The second option that we're really happy to be able to provide is our part-time web option. So the part-time web actually starts every 9 weeks. It is a 54-week course. So this is part-time. It's in the evenings for those of you that might have full-time jobs or family considerations or anything that would keep you from attending full-time. We have this part-time option. And so this is actually Monday through Thursday. It's 6 to 9 p.m. every evening, Monday through Thursday, and then 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday mornings. So it is 5 days a week. You're doing 15 hours a week plus whatever time you spend outside of class, which is not mandatory, but the more time you spend on anything, the better you're going to get at it. And so we're really, really happy to be able to offer that part-time for our students that can't meet the requirements of the full-time. Our next part-time start date is February 25th. We then have an April 29th and a July 8th start date on that. Next slide. So day in life of a Lambda web student. And I'm going to kind of talk about it from a full-time student perspective here. First things first, you start class in the morning. And you'll work on a little code challenge. You'll work on a small miniature problem. You get about 30 minutes to start on that, and then you meet with your cohort mates in small groups and really discuss how you worked on it, what other options there were to building it, etc. It really just helps you start the day off fresh. You then jump right into a lecture. So the lecture lasts usually about 2 hours, and we talked about the IY loop. And we will go through the full I do, we do, you do, and we'll build something together. You get lunch for an hour, and then after that, it's project time. You're going to have a project each day corresponding to your lecture, and you will spend the afternoon building this project out. You cap the day off with a final meeting with your PM group. We have PMs are our project managers, and you'll be in groups of 8 students. So you'll really find this sense of community within your group, and you'll be able to talk about all of the different kind of ways you approach the problem. In software engineering, there is no single correct best way to build something or to solve a problem. And so having different perspectives on the same problem really helps you learn it really well. And that's kind of just a standard day in the life. Of course, there's little mini things going on here and there, but that's the general overall feel of what's going on with web in a day in the life of a web student. Next slide. All right, questions. I'm going to open up the Q&A. Please append your question with web. I'm going to go from the top. Any part-time classes completed yet? Our first part-time class completes at on February 16th. So they have actually been in since January of 2018. They are working through their labs portion now, and they are about to be graduated, and I'm super pumped for them to be graduating. Let's see. Currently enrolled in the free web course. I was wondering if the class starts and February 25th. I have to finish the sprints for the entry course. The requirement is that you finish the Lambda challenge. The Intro to Web course is to get you up to speed to complete the Lambda challenge. Once you complete the Lambda challenge, you'll have an interview, and if you're accepted, then you'll be given a start date. For those of you that haven't begun any kind of thing, you're just fresh, we do have a free Intro to Web Dev course that goes over quite a bit of material and really gets you a good head start and gets you a feel for what we do in web. Let's see, I've seen many job posts which are recommending experience with Angular. Does Web Dev course cover Angular? We do not cover Angular, but as I said when I was talking about React, React is one framework, Angular is one framework, we have Vue, Backbone, all kinds of different frameworks. It's very, very, very rare that any one developer knows them all, but a good developer will know how to pick up any framework very quickly, and that's really what we're teaching you here. We don't want to teach you to be specifically React developers. We want to teach you to be engineers that are able to pick up a new technology very fast. If you talk to any of our alumni, you'll know that that is definitely the case. Let's see. How do you determine web dev curriculum content? That is an amazing question. So not only are all of our instructors experts in the field, but we also have a continuous relationship with other experts in the field. We have relationships with different companies, and we are constantly having our curriculum audited by other companies. And we have a pulse on what's going on within the world. We try not to be heavy on any kind of trendy technology. We want to make sure that you are learning the ability to, learn these new technologies and learn these other things, but also to pick up things on your own. So we really want to learn these core concepts. So we do have constant auditing of our curriculum, not only with our own instructors, but with other experts in the field and full hiring teams from other companies as well. I've heard many companies do whiteboarding interviews. Does Lambda cover this with their students? Oh man, lost it. In the course to prepare for interviews, absolutely. So we have our outcomes team, and you'll hear from them right after me. But we do lots of whiteboarding practice. It is a part of interviews, and so it's brought in with our interview prep and our career readiness program. So you'll get that during the course as well. Is there anything not taught due to time constraints? Man, well, if we taught everything there was to know about web development, you would probably be in this class for about 15 years. So of course, there's going to be things that we don't cover very specifically, but that's where I kind of was at with this whole, we teach you these core concepts, and then when you need to learn them, something like, oh, I got a job, working with this framework, etc., you're going to be able to jump into that, learn it very quickly on your own, and start using it right away. Are we able to pick our own project? As said previously, we love when students come up with your own projects. Obviously, not all of them can be used. Not every single person gets to pick their own project because you're going to be on a team. And so obviously, if you have a project you're very passionate about, bring it up with your instructor, bring it up with labs, your team, and we'll try to, as hard as we can, to make that a reality. Let's see. Can a part-time person jump to full-time for periods of time? That's not really a thing we do. If it is something that, you have a time constraint, we can go on a case-by-case basis, but that's not necessarily something we do. Does web development course work with iOS 11 devices? So we don't learn we don't learn to develop iOS applications. Using JavaScript, you can use something like React Native to build an application that'll work on an iOS device, but we don't learn to build iOS. If you're interested in building iOS apps, I highly suggest taking the iOS course. But we're going to build web applications that are usable on hopefully any iOS device. Average cohort age, well, that really ranges from class to class. I would say the average age would probably be late 20s to early 30s, but you know, you could have a class that averages higher or lower, depends on really on the class. There is a prereq for entrance. It is the Lambda challenge. Upper limit on age? Absolutely not. No, we do not have any age limit. And not only that, but any student that's an older student that is fearing that they're not going to have the best time, I'd say really give it a shot, because you'll be pleasantly surprised most of the time. So we do not have any kind of age limits other than a lower age limit. Criminal background check, not for our course, but if you are fearing a criminal background check, you will probably have one when you get a job. So, you know, it's up to you on that. Are you able to find remote positions, people who live in non-tech areas? I would definitely say that remote positions are harder to come by, and most remote positions want you to have some experience. That's not to say that they're not possible, but being in a larger population center or having the ability to relocate will definitely help further along your job search. That's not to say that there aren't other jobs in lower population areas, because we have students from all over the US that have gotten jobs. Let's see. Do you teach Bootstrap in detail? No, we used to teach it, and we have really found that with our CSS instruction, that Bootstrap is very easy to pick up for students that have already gone through our CSS. So we don't teach it in detail. It's definitely a smaller part of our curriculum, but we really teach you how to build your own Bootstrap, essentially. How many instructors do we have in the time at Lambda? So right now there are 5 web instructors. Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, I lost it. Elizabeth asked, can you give us examples of what I mean by web applications? It sounds so broad. And it is purposefully broad, right? We think about, we'll say a web application. Most people, when they visit or use something in their internet browser, don't understand that they're using an application. Something like Facebook is an application. You're interacting with something, you're sending it data, it's taking that data, it's parsing it, it's manipulating it, showing you some data. That is an application. Twitter, Reddit, YouTube is a web application, right? These are all something that, 10 to 15 years ago, we would download Facebook to our computer and use it like that. But now we have the ability, thanks to some advances in web technology, that we can just run it through our browser. So yeah, application is super broad. It can mean games. It can mean SaaS applications. It can mean, social media applications. It can mean, online image editors. That's an application. These are all things that you will be able to build when you're finished with the course. I'm going to see if I've got time or if we're short on time now.
Let's do one more question.
Cool. Let's come through. Oh man, I can't find one that, let's see. What tools are being used? Okay, cool. That's a great question. NPM, yes. JavaScript, yes. HTML and CSS, absolutely. Node, yep. Sass, oh, I lost it. Sass, yes. JSON, not really a tool, but we do use JSON when dealing with data in the back end. Bootstrap, React, those are all tools we use. Yarn, Node, we use SQLite. We go into, there's a lot of other stuff we use. There's a ton of tools we use, and we learn about them all. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll take any other questions offline, but I hope to see you in our next program.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about is our outcomes team and program. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Holdaway.
Well, all right, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name is Ryan Holdaway. I run the outcomes team at Lambda School. To sum up really quickly, the outcomes team works with Lambda School students and graduates to help them find gainful employment after the program. We have a couple main objectives. We want you to be the most dangerous job seekers on the planet. So we teach curriculum that runs parallel to all of our different programs designed to help you be efficient job seekers and effective in your career. So we teach things like resume preparation, interview skills, networking, all the tools that you'll need to have in order to go and find jobs for yourself. We also have a team of salespeople that work full-time on building relationships with companies that are looking to hire people with the skills we teach at Lambda School, to try to build relationships where we can, send over a nice warm lead for a student. So there's a couple of questions here on the slide deck. How does Lambda help me get a job? Well, number one, I teach you what all the best job seekers in the world know. We help you. We start week 3 of all of the programs. We train you for the whole rest of the time you're here. And a lot of times we will even help introduce you to a company if we have a partner in your area that sounds interesting. We have a full-time job seeking program after Lambda School called Lambda Next, where we continue to build out our portfolio projects, where we continue to practice our interview skills, and where we continue to have a community of job seeking alumni that you can work with and, pair program with, and that will support and encourage you during your job search. So for a lot of schools, you'll have this great community experience while you're going through the program, but that'll stop the day that you graduate. You're kind of on your own. We don't believe in that. One of the most special things about Lambda School is the community that we build here, and we extend that support to our job seeking students. So another part of Lambda Next is that you'll get a career coach about halfway through the program that will help you, not only make sure that your portfolio and your presentations when you're applying for jobs are ideal, but they'll continue to work with you on your job search strategy, helping you identify companies that you might want to work at and how to get connected to people at those companies. That'll help you set goals for your job search process, help hold you accountable to those goals, and even sit with you and help you if you need extra eyes on writing a cover letter or things like that. Your career coach will be there to support you, not just until you get your first job, but even after you're working in your career. We also bring in outside companies to recruit Lambda School students. Right now, we're having about 2 companies present to Lambda students a day. That number is probably going to go up this year as we build out our outreach efforts. This can be anything from huge companies like IBM and Cisco. JP Morgan Chase have all presented within the last few weeks. The New York Times is presenting next week, from small startups, places like Clover. I can't list these off the top of my head on the spot, but we have a big network of hiring partners that come in and present to our students and then do call for applications or sometimes even host dedicated interview days. And starting this year in 2018, we're going to be hosting in-person hiring events in cities where we have a high concentration of students and companies that are looking to hire. And we're also going to be hosting remote hiring events for students who don't live inside of those cities where we're hosting an in-person event. So I think that's the covered information on the slide. And man, I'm going to rip through as many questions as I can. So how long has the school been open? Since April 2017. Is there a lower age limit for Lambda courses? Yeah, you have to be a legal adult, 18 years. Outcomes, does Lambda Next have additional cost over and above the student ISA? What if I told you that Lambda Next was available for free for every Lambda School student until they got a job? What if I told you? That'd be amazing, right? That's the case. We offer Lambda Next for free, no additional cost to the ISA. That's available for every Lambda graduate. I want to attend part-time. Should I consider working in web development full-time if I'm a student taking a BSIT? I don't know what a BSIT is. Will there also be labs in computer science section of the course? Will there be close to the same number of labs in the first and second parts? I don't understand what's asked by that question, but every student in every program goes through Lambda Labs. UX students go through twice. This first one, I see a lot of professionals already working the field interested in these programs. How do you keep pace so that experienced people continue to learn while new students don't get left behind? Well, that's a really great question, Roberto. One of the best ways to really deepen your understanding of something is to teach it to someone else. So our advanced students find a lot of opportunities to help mentor the students who are struggling, and that helps bring everybody up to speed. What is Lambda Next? Lambda Next is our full-time job search program that starts when students graduate from the program. It is a support community to help job-seeking students have daily goals that they can work on every single day that's going to lead to them landing a job. So we work on portfolios, portfolio projects. We work on deepening our skills, sharpening the saw. We also work on connecting with companies and networking. And we have a peer group of students led by a career coach that work on those things together. It's pretty great. Jeffrey, what's your info on diversity? About 34% of our students identify as white and male. The rest identify as something else. We have a very diverse student body. Can you backtrack in the class as much as needed? All of the course material is available in our LMS, so you can go back and watch old videos whenever you want. What are the 5 cities with the highest concentration of Lambda students? Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I would say the 5 biggest metros in the United States. So probably LA, Chicago, maybe San Francisco Bay Area, New York City, and Dallas. The students' distribution follows what you would expect from a normal population map. So just anytime where there's a big city, there's a big cluster of Lambda School students. We are in, I believe, 49 states, Tommy. We are still looking for somebody from Vermont. So Vermont, if you're out there, let's go. We do not hold in-person classes occasionally or ever, but we do encourage students to meet up with their local chapter of Lambda students on the first Friday of every month. How many are applying in 2019 so far? A lot of people. Do you see many jobs in the Orlando, Florida area? Yes. We've placed a few grads down in Orlando. How many part-time students? A lot. That varies cohort to cohort. David Martinson, does Lambda Next extend beyond the first job? For instance, one gets a job that turns out to only last a few months. Can they use Lambda Next to find the next job? Yes, David. Lambda School Career Support is available for any graduate forever. Come back whenever. We've started to have, now that we've had graduates out for a year or so, students that maybe took a contract job that was short-term, 3-6 months, something like that, have come back, and we've helped them find a second job. And that's a blast because I get to see my friends that have been out working for a while. Really fun when that happened. I expect to have that happen more. How many get accepted versus apply? More apply than get accepted. How many graduated so far since founding? I don't know that number off the top of my head, a few hundred. How are jobs in tech in New York City? Do you have average salary for full stack? Our average salary for full stack dev, median salary is right around 65 to 70,000. That is nationwide in the United States. So it's obviously higher in big metro areas than it would be in Hastings, Nebraska. New York City is a great market. Got a bunch of students up there. What is the average percentage of students graduating landing a full-time job versus part-time? I don't count students that graduate and get a part-time job as having a job. So most of our students are getting full-time jobs when they're taking jobs. And the ones that get a part-time, like part-time software engineering jobs really aren't a thing. What is the average percentage of students graduating? Okay, I think I got that one. What percentage of students actually get a job paying $50,000 per year after graduation? So our most recent outcomes report that we just submitted to SIR, the Council for Integrity of Results Reporting, we had 83% of our students were placed within 180 days of graduation. with a median salary of just under 70,000. I think it was 68 and a half. I don't have like the breakdown of exactly how many of those were over 50, but the median is well north of 50, and that's school-wide and has been since the beginning. Is it best to save money and survive and do full-time while doing full-time or part-time? That's going to depend on your personal situation. The part-time program takes longer, so like you have a little bit more time to absorb the information. I don't really, that's going to depend on your personal situation. Make the best decision for you and your family so that you can focus the proper attention at Lambda School. You're going to want to take this seriously. It's hard. What's the acceptance rate for applicants? I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's not super high. What kind of support system can help the new trainee? Like when they get a job, that's going to depend on the employer. What about jobs in the Baton Rouge area? I don't know that we've had anybody down in Baton Rouge. But we have partners in Houston. I don't think that that's too far. But like there's software jobs in every city. Every company is a software company. And like, I mean, if you're from Baton Rouge and you want to stay there, we'll do what we can to help you connect with companies in the Baton Rouge area and get you some opportunities to go work there. Why does the 17% not get a job? All kinds of reasons. Often because they take a job outside of the software industry to pay the bills because it was taking them too long to job search, and then they stop writing code every day and they stop trying to get a software job. What would you typically disqualify someone from getting accepted in Lambda School if they were under 18 years old, or if they were trying to do an income share agreement in a country where we do not have the legal ability to offer those? If I apply to Lambda, there's a chance I don't get accepted. How is this decided? There's a lot of reasons. We'll go through the interview process, pass the Lambda challenge, and you've got a good shot. What's the dropout rate? The dropout rate is pretty low after the first month. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's not super high. Any new programs you're working on? Dave, if I could just rattle off every program I would want. So we have our Java classes coming up. That's going to be a supplemental course for graduates. We might start offering that to students mid-flight at some point. I would love a C# class. I'm a Ruby guy, and I would love a Ruby class. I would love to teach Elixir. There's a lot of things we would like to teach right now. It's just trying to find what's the best fit for most of our students. If there's demand, we'll certainly consider it. If you drop out, what are the consequences? It depends on when you drop out of the program. If what you say is true that a part-time software engineering gig is not a thing, is there a better choice for freelance part-time positions? I have more than one career running and I can only manage part-time. Yeah, I mean, most of the time, if somebody's going to hire you to like work for them to build their software, they want you full-time. I'm sure that there are part-time jobs out there. They're really, really uncommon. But yeah, definitely freelancing or just doing contract work is a pretty good way to manage that if you don't want to commit to full-time hours. Do prefer job seekers over company founders? Yeah, I think it's better for our students long-term if they go get some real experience working with other software engineers on a product that's being used by lots of people. That'll teach you how to build good software. And then go start a company after that. We're all pretty entrepreneurial. That's the reason we joined this crazy company that's just a startup and are on board for this. We love that. But it's going to be better off for you if you get a real job first and kind of get some experience. What do you do in your free time? I don't have free time. I just help people get jobs. Is Lambda School offered for people residing in Germany? I'm not sure the boundaries on our European offerings. Tommy, can you help out with that one?
All right, I'm going to cut you off.
All right, sorry, I got through as many as I can. Thanks a lot, everybody. This was a blast.
All right, we're going to wrap up. We answered a lot of questions. By my count, about 400. But I know some of you have questions that you didn't get answered. If you still have questions, if you are specifically asking about admissions or applying to Lambda School, you can email contact@lambdaschool.com. Use the Zoom Q&A feature is kind of over because we're about to shut this down. We will be posting a recording of the session here. So watch our our Twitter account, which is at Lambda School. And we will talk to all of you later. Thanks so much for participating and asking so many questions and learning more about Lambda.